All right, so it's list season. We are very, very much in the off season, but football season will be here before you know it. So with that said, the ceiling and the floor for Tennessee football, there's been a whole lot of talk about that in recent weeks. I'm going to tell you what I think the ceiling is, and I bet you're going to agree with me as well. That and more, it's your Monday edition of Locked On Vols.
You are Locked On Vols, your daily podcast on the Tennessee Volunteers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, everybody? Welcome into it, your Monday edition of Locked On Vols. I'm your host, Eric Kane. Thank you so much for being here, making Locked On Vols your first listen, your first watch each and every single day. Shout out to you everydayers. Could not do this show without you. And tomorrow's show, Tuesday's show, is when you take over the show for the mailbag edition of the podcast. So send in those questions, comments, concerns, all that and more. Get into it on tomorrow's edition of the show. Big shout out to our friends over at LinkedIn, where these days every new hire can feel like a high-stakes wager, and you want to find some people that are right for the job faster and for free. So you can post your job for free over at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. Terms and conditions do apply. Got a fun show coming up here today. Vol football, ceiling and the floor in a matter of seconds. SEC quarterback rankings from one publication. I'll tell you where Nico Iamaleava is and why he's probably too low, but it's more about just about right. That coming up in segment 2. And then get a little bit of a reaction from the baseball weekend, Tennessee at Vanderbilt. All that and more coming up here on a Monday show. So if you're watching on YouTube, and even if you're listening, it might sound a little bit more like a reverb, kind of if I'm doing this from a closet. I am, where in the world is Kaner this week, right? I mean, at real time of recording this episode, because I am on the road, I am once again in a continental breakfast room at a hotel in Nashville. So that is where I am recording this episode. And because of traveling and all that type of stuff, this is kind of the best time that I decided to record this, but should be good to go here for a Monday morning. But that's kind of the deal about where I am now. I'll be back home in the home studio for tomorrow's show. So I've been seeing a lot of ceiling and floor talk for this team and that team and college football playoff talk and all that. I was doing my weekly radio hit on the Sports Animal it was actually Friday of this past week, and they asked me, because I guess that's what they were talking about before I came on, they asked me what they thought, what I thought the ceiling for Tennessee football is in 2024 and what the floor would be. And, I'd already been thinking about this a little bit because I think the ceiling is pretty universal, right? I mean, it is an expanded 12-team college football playoff. I think the ceiling is Tennessee is a college football playoff team. I see no reason why that shouldn't be the ceiling. I think the pieces are in place to where Tennessee's got a quarterback that I believe in. Tennessee's got an ability to get after the passers, got a deep, wide range of defensive linemen that are not going to get tired. I think the linebackers are going to be better, especially if Keenan Peely can stay healthy. It's going to be a new look secondary. They're going to take their lumps for sure, but because you have that defensive line, I think that they're going to be able to mask a lot of those warts in the back end, even though I do think that they're going to be a little bit more athletic potentially. On the offensive side, I mentioned the quarterback. I like the running back, Dylan Sampson. I like the pieces behind him, though very unproven. I love Tennessee's wide receiver room, and I truly do believe that Tennessee's offensive line is going to be just fine. There's some depth concerns, sure. Tackle and left guard, of course, we know we're still looking for a left guard. Backup center, but I think these are a lot of the same problems or maybe concerns that are up and down the SEC, are around the country. Why? Well, because a lot of teams don't have quality depth on the offensive line or really anywhere in certain positions, because take Lance Hurd for an example. Lance Hurd was sitting behind two really talented offensive tackles in Baton Rouge. Lance Hurd was the #1 overall prospect signed by the Tigers in 2023, former 5-star. He didn't want to sit around and wait for those two guys to go to the NFL. So he enters the transfer portal, and he comes over here to Tennessee. And so, sure, Tennessee's sitting here like, well, man, if Lance Hurd goes down or John Campbell goes down, you got Dane Davis, and that's good. He's a swing man across the 5 up front. But really, there's some depth concerns. But I think that there's a lot of those concerns around the country, in my opinion, not just at Tennessee. So the ceiling, I truly do believe that the ceiling can be a spot in the college football playoff. You look at Tennessee's record, and eventually, certainly over the offseason, we're going to go through and talk about win-loss, overall predictions and everything. But, I mean, you open up with the Mocs, that'll be a dub. Neutral site game in week 2 against NC State and Charlotte, that will certainly be a challenge. They ended last season off really, really hot. They got better at quarterback. But I truly do believe that that's a game that, Tennessee is going to win on just talent alone, right? Kent State will be a dub. Oklahoma on the road, we know how big of a game that's going to be. You have the bye week. Then you head back on the road, take on Arkansas. Of course, Sam Pittman fighting for his life, fighting for his coaching tenure, I should say, not his life, at Arkansas. And, that won't be a laydown, but that's a game you should win. Florida, we know Tennessee and Florida. I understand it, but I'll continue to say, I mean, goodness gracious, if you're not going to beat Florida this year, what's going on here, right? I mean, Florida, you shouldn't have lost to him last year. And Florida this year, Billy Napier, again, coaching for his job. You should be able to beat Florida, especially at home. Then you've got the third Saturday in October against Alabama. Team's still going to be super talented. We know this. Team's still going to be really, really good at the quarterback position with Jalen Milroe. I think that Alabama will start its downward trend, but this is still going to be a good team in a hard game. But it's at home. The last time Tennessee beat both Florida and Alabama, I don't have to tell you guys, it was at home. Then you get an off week. Come back to Neyland Stadium, take on Kentucky. Typically, it's never easy, but a game that you usually win if you're Tennessee. You got Mississippi State at home. Got 5 weeks, 4 home games in a row. Then you're on the road at Georgia. We know that challenge is going to be very mighty. Back home at UTEP for homecoming in November, and then I believe it's going to be homecoming. I think they actually put that out. It might not be homecoming, but nonetheless, or senior day, whatever. A game that you're probably going to win, and if you don't, you got some issues, and then you're finishing off the season at Vanderbilt. So, I mean, you're looking here and say, I think the ceiling for this team can certainly be double-digit wins. I could see Tennessee maybe fumbling, no pun intended, on the road at Oklahoma to begin SEC play because, again, good environment, good team, all eyeballs on you, and one of the first true big tests for Nico Iamaleava. I could see Tennessee losing at home to Alabama. I could see Tennessee losing on the road at Georgia. And technically, I could see Tennessee losing to Florida just because it's Tennessee and Florida. So if we're talking floor, no worse than 8-4. But I don't see Tennessee losing all 4 of those games that I mentioned. For me personally, I think Tennessee's floor, well, let me take that back. I might have Tennessee picked at 9-3 this season. When we get closer to it, maybe I'll be at 10-2. So maybe my floor should be 8-4. And that is, let me explain to you, the floor would be worst case scenario, right? Worst case scenario. We know the challenges of at Oklahoma, Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. And Florida's in there just because Florida always gets Tennessee, unfortunately, for the most part. But I love the fact that that's there. So I'm going to stay with the floor being 8-4 because, again, that is absolute worst case scenario. But the ceiling, I believe, is 11-1, guys. I mean, I think Tennessee's talented enough to win every game on the schedule. However, Georgia is going to be tough. Losing on the road at Georgia will not keep you out of the college football playoffs, especially if that is your lone loss or potentially one of 2 losses. So I think ceiling Tennessee could be 11-1 and taking on Georgia once again in the SEC championship, depending on how everything else plays out around the schedule. Of course, Alabama's going to have a say in that. Ole Miss will have a say in that. Missouri will have a say in that. Oklahoma will have a say in that. LSU, it's the SEC. But I think the ceiling for Tennessee, if everything goes perfect, you're probably not going to win every single regular season game. So I'll say 11-1. And I'll say the floor is 8-4. Now, along with the ceiling, certainly a spot in the SEC championship. And more than that, really, it's a spot in the college football playoff. We're at a time now to where you could see this in the 14 college football playoff a little bit because a couple of times 2 SEC teams were in there. Your goal is always to win the SEC. Your goal is always to go and compete for an SEC championship. And I'm not trying to say that's not the goal at all, but you can be in the college football playoff without being in the SEC championship. And yeah, sure, you're probably one of those, seeds 5 through 12 or whatever, or seeds 5 through 9. That's kind of getting those, that's playing where the you're not getting a bye. That's what I'm trying to say. And you could maybe even be hosting a playoff game potentially, but nonetheless, I think Tennessee is good enough, again, because of the pieces you have at quarterback, the pieces you have on the defensive line, the weaponry that you have on the outside, and a run game that I think is not going to skip a beat. So my ceiling, 11-1 in the regular season, a spot in the college football playoff. My floor is 8-4, and guys, I do not believe that Tennessee is going to be 8-4, but I mean, again, we've seen so many Tennessee teams lose to Florida when it shouldn't have, and so I'm not going to back off on that. I'm not saying Florida's going to beat Tennessee. I'm just saying, again, this is the floor. I know how people can hear something and run with it. This is the floor. Let me know what you think. Your ceiling, your floor for the University of Tennessee. Would love to get your inputs on that. Maybe turn that into a little bit of the mailbag portion of the show tomorrow at _Caner and at Locked On Vols. Hey, when we come back, talking a lot about Nico Iamaleava, quarterback rankings across the Southeastern Conference. Where does Nico come in according to one publication? That is coming up next as we continue on here with this edition of Locked On Vols here on a Monday. All right, LinkedIn Jobs. When you're hiring for your small business, you want to find quality professionals that are right for the role. That's why you've got to check out LinkedIn Jobs. LinkedIn Jobs has the tools to help you find the right professionals for your team faster and for free. LinkedIn isn't just like any other job board. LinkedIn helps you hire professionals that you can't find anywhere else, and even those who aren't actively searching for a new job but might be open to the perfect role with you. In a given month, over 70% of LinkedIn users don't visit other leading job sites. So if you're looking on LinkedIn, if you're not looking on LinkedIn, you're probably looking in the wrong place. On LinkedIn, 86% of small businesses get a qualified candidate within 24 hours. Hire professionals like a professional on LinkedIn. 2.5 million small businesses are using LinkedIn Jobs for hiring, so why aren't you? Post your job for free at linkedin.com/lockedoncollege. That is linkedin.com/lockedoncollege to post your job for free. Terms and conditions, well, they do apply. More Locked On Vols here on a Monday coming up next. Okay, so we talked a lot about, obviously, Tennessee's ceiling in segment number 1. Tennessee's floor for 24. Ceiling, floor, 24. It rhymes, right? It's the little things, guys, little things. And a lot of that conversation had to be based around quarterback Nico Iamaleava. Saturday Down South put out their post-spring SEC quarterback rankings, and I want to react to it. Again, I know you guys are probably thinking, gosh, all he ever does right now is just react to other stuff. Well, I'm a podcaster, so, first and foremost, that's a lot of what I do. But also, we are in the month of May, so, I react to it, and then I give my spin on it. And then a lot of times I'll do something, and somebody will put their spin on what I say. That's the beautiful thing about podcasting. It is a content creation, and I love it. But I did want to comment on this because when you look at where Nico Iamaleava is ranked in this post-spring quarterback rankings from Saturday Down South, it might puzzle you at first glance. But when we dig down deeper into it, it's like, okay, well, where would you have Nico? Nico Iamaleava, sure, number 1 overall prospect in the country, according to On3 in the class of 2023, former 5-star quarterback, the guy that ran all over Iowa's defense. That was a really, really good, respectable defense from the Big Ten in the Citrus Bowl. But again, just has one SEC start under his belt. No, excuse me, not an SEC, just one start overall under his belt. It came against a Big Ten team in the bowl game, but just one start under his belt. So with the unknown that is, where would you place Nico? Well, this ranking has Nico at number 7. And again, when I first saw it, I'm scrolling down. They started at 16, worked their way down. And I'm like, okay, no Nico, good, no Nico. Oh, number 7, there's Nico. Man, that seems a little too high. Seems a little too high for Nico. But then I look at the guys in front of him. Guys in front of him, number 6 ranked is Connor Wagman at Texas A&M. If he can stay healthy, he's a good quarterback. The thing with him is he's just not being able to stay healthy at all. Saturday Down South puts down here under Connor Wagman. In 8 games as a starter, he has a 16-2 touchdown to interception ratio, and in games that he started and finished, he had a QB rating of at least 158.2 in 5 of 7 opportunities. Mind you, half of that was as a true freshman with Jimbo Fisher as his primary play caller. So yeah, Mike Elko's coming in. They're going to change some things, but Connor Wagman, I believe, is very underrated. And when he's played, he's been really good, but it's just a matter of he's not been able to play an awful lot. So Connor Wagman is a somewhat proven commodity in front of Nico. Okay, well, who else? Brady Cook. Well, Brady Cook just came off the best year of his life, best year of Missouri football in quite some time. Only Power 5 quarterback who had more 40-yard completions than Cook were 4 guys who were drafted in the top 12, and Dylan Gabriel, who had 31 touchdown passes away from breaking the all-time FBS touchdown passing record. So Brady Cook was in elite company a season ago when Missouri had a really, really good season. Okay, well, if Brady Cook's in front of him, all right. Jackson Dart, well, you knew he was going to be somewhere in there. Jackson Dart comes in at number 4. A lot of people think Jackson Dart is overrated. What say you? This is what SDS has to say about Jackson Dart. After he had a stark difference in production against quality competition in 2022, Dart came back and improved immensely against FBS teams with a winning record. In those games in 23, he was number 8 in quarterback rating. He averaged 9.7 yards per attempt and added an average of 39 rushing yards to lead Ole Miss to its first 11-win season in program history. So like Brady Cook, Jackson Dart did a lot of good things last year. Okay, Jalen Milrose at number 3, know about him. Quinn Ewers is at number 2, know a lot about him. And Carson Beck's at number 1. Carson Beck's a good quarterback. I'm not trying to take anything away from him. But boy, oh boy, does Carson Beck. And I know Georgia's really built on defense, but he still had a lot of toys to play with. Brock Bowers, Ladd McConkey, Dominic Levitz, Ra Thomas, Humphreys, Dylan Bell. We know about the stable of running backs Georgia always has. We know about the offensive linemen. Carson Beck, Stetson Bennett. Carson Beck's much better than Stetson Bennett, don't get me wrong. But it's easy when you have the pieces around you. So any way you want to spin, I mean, Carson Beck's going to be in front of Nico in any list you look at, right? And that makes sense because he's played in a ton of big games and he's played a whole lot more. Quinn Ewers, not going to argue there. Jalen Milroe, not going to argue there. I mean, Jalen Milroe is the perfect example of, in my opinion, of a great college player that might not have all the hype going into the NFL, or maybe he will. We'll have to see. Might not turn into the best NFL quarterback out there, but boy, is he a great quarterback in the college game. So I have no issue with Beck, Ewers, or Jalen Milroe in front of him. Jackson Dart, Brady Cook, I get it. I understand. Connor Wagman, I might switch him and Nico, but the fact of the matter is there's just so much unknown, even for us who we're so close to this and we follow this every single day. But think about it from a national perspective. Think about it from writers and fans that cover the SEC and watch SEC football from a national perspective. They've only heard about Nico, about being the 5-star prospect, the NIL man, and then his one game against Iowa, which was really, really good. There's just so much unknown. So I think it's very fair to have Nico towards the back of the first half of SEC quarterbacks post-spring. I think that's certainly fair. Let's look at some of the quarterbacks who are listed behind Nico. Garrett Nussmeier, good example. Nussmeier's played a lot more than Nico, but he's been a career backup to this point. But we're saying that Nico has more upside, has a higher ceiling, even a higher floor than that of Garrett Nussmeier. And so that's why Nico comes in front of Garrett Nussmeier. Nussmeier at 8, Graham Mertz at 9. Graham Mertz had a really good year last year. And you guys know, if you're everydayers, appreciate you. If you're everydayers, I was so low on Graham Mertz last year coming into Florida because he was so bad at Wisconsin. And, you're going to step foot in the SEC and it's just going to get worse. He had a really good year last year. But Graham Mertz is rated at number 9. I think that's probably appropriate. Jackson Arnold, very, very much high upside. Got a little taste of it last year, just like Nico. He comes in there at number 10 with Oklahoma. Brock Vandergriff has not played at all. He's now at Kentucky from Georgia. He's at 11. Taylon Green transferring in to Arkansas. He is coming over at number 12. Peyton Thorne of Auburn's 13. Blake Shapen, the transfer from Baylor at Mississippi State, he's at 14. Lenora Sellers, who Shane Beamer recently as of last week, announced that that's his starting quarterback coming out of spring. A lot of upside there. He's at number 15. And then Diego Pavá for Vanderbilt. And, guys, I'm not even going to lie to you. I have no clue who this guy is. If we remember, Vanderbilt lost all three of their quarterbacks, scholarship quarterbacks that played in any games this past year. Of course, Mike Wright, who left Vanderbilt this time last year, went to Mississippi State. Now he's at Northwestern. There's been 4 quarterbacks at Vanderbilt that have played the last 2 years, and they are all gone. So I'm telling you, I mean, no disrespect to Diego here, but I have no clue who's on Vanderbilt's roster. He's coming from New Mexico State. Let's see. He led New Mexico State to more victories against SEC competition, Auburn, than Vanderbilt did in 2023. That's a really, really good stat. So I ask you, 7th ranked here is Nico Iamaleava. It seems too high, or too low, however you want to phrase it. Not good enough. I could see flip-flopping Nico and Connor Wagman. But from the little that we've seen, I understand Nico not being higher in this ranking than a Cook and a Dart, who had exceptional years last year. And then, of course, Miller Quinn Ewers, and Carson Beck. So it seems about right. I mean, maybe there's a little wiggle room there. He can move up to maybe 5 or 6. But the fact of the matter is, Nico hadn't played an awful lot. But that should not derail any of the excitement, any of the expectations, because Nico, with this Josh Heupel offense, I'm not saying it's going to be exactly like 2022, but it's going to have a semblance of 2022. More explosiveness. I think Nico's got obviously more ability than what Joe Milton showed in 2022. 3. Ability to throw off platform. My favorite thing about Nico, when the pocket collapses or when he's evaded from the pocket or whatever, his ability to make something happen. I love that about Nico. He's got a strong arm. He's accurate. He's got mobility, not Michael Vick, but mobility, and we saw that in the bowl game. And Tennessee will call design runs with him too. And so I'm really, really excited to see Nico play. So, this is one list from SDS. But there's going to be there's already tons of lists out there. There's going to continue to be lists out there as we work through list season and on into the summer, leading up into SEC Media Days. Don't be upset. Don't be discouraged if you see Nico coming in around 6, 7, or 8. He just ain't played. He just ain't played much. And so that's the way I'm viewing it, and I encourage you to view it that way as well. Let me know, where would you have Nico Iamaleava coming out of post-spring practice quarterback rankings in the SEC? I think 6, 7, about right, just because of the established starters in front of him, and Nico's not played an awful lot. All right, good topic. Again, we can kind of coin that in there and can join that in there with Twitter Tuesday coming up tomorrow for the Mailbag Show. Let me know what you think. Hey, when we come back, we'll talk a little baseball from Vanderbilt in the state's capital over the weekend. That is coming up next as we continue on here with the Monday Locked On Vols. It is winner take all time in the NBA, in the NHL. FanDuel's give those playoffs. FanDuel's giving you a shot to bring home the big win of your own. Right now, new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. That is $150 to bet on spreads, money lines, player props, and a whole lot more. Visit FanDuel.com/lockedon and make every playoff shot count. It's America's #1 sportsbook. It's where you can make more over at FanDuel. And again, that is new customers can get $150 in bonus bets with any winning $5 bet. $150. Spreads, money lines, props, and more. You guys know I love to dabble in the NASCARs a little bit on the weekends, all right? Baseball's happening right now. Go Atlanta Braves. All that and more. FanDuel.com/lockedon. Make every playoff shot count. FanDuel, it is America's #1 sportsbook. More to come as we continue on this Monday edition of Locked On Vols. All right, so you guys know I'm on the road this weekend. Typically, if you're an everydayer, appreciate you guys. You guys know that if I'm on the road covering baseball over the weekend, typically I like to record the Monday show before the game on Sunday, because I got to go and I got to cover the game, and that takes 3 hours or so, and then I've got post game, and that takes a little while, and then I got to drive home. So by the time I get home at 10, 11, 12, whenever it is, I'm not really feeling up to recording Locked On Vols at that point in time. So I hope you forgive me for doing this a little bit in advance. And I want to talk about baseball because there's some big things, but the disclaimer is I won't have any conversation about Sunday's game in this segment. because at the time I'm recording it, it hasn't happened. The beautiful thing about editing and podcasting is you can do it kind of whenever you want. So forgive me for that. I did it a couple weeks ago against Kentucky. Didn't have too many people complaining about it, so forgive me. But the big thing is Tennessee has won its 8th consecutive series in SEC play. Tennessee took game 1 by a final score of 8-4. Tennessee took game 2 over Vanderbilt by a final score of 7-6. They've been close. They've been highly contested ball games. It has been a fun weekend so far. Of course, with game 3, a chance to sweep on the line for Tennessee coming up on Sunday. Tennessee over Vanderbilt. Again, Tennessee's has won more games in the all-time series, but with Tim Corbin and before Tony Vitello, I mean, it was tough sledding. Even the early years of Tony Vitello, it was tough sledding. But it's a new era with Tennessee baseball right now. You guys know Tennessee's ranked number 1 in the country. Tennessee has been in the College World Series twice in the past 3 seasons. We know all that, all right? But Tennessee is really, just like with Florida, and we talked a little bit about last week, Tennessee has really dominated Vanderbilt here lately. Tennessee has now won 9 straight games against Vanderbilt. 9 straight games against Vanderbilt, and the 8th straight series win overall for Tennessee. Tennessee's now won back-to-back series in Nashville for the first time since 1993 to 1995, meaning Tennessee has won away from Lindsey Nelson Stadium. Tennessee has won on the road at away from Lindsey Nelson Stadium against Vanderbilt in the state capitol the last 2 times, and that hasn't happened since the early to mid-90s in 93 to 95. So that is quite the accomplishment. It's the 3rd longest win streak at 9 straight games over Vanderbilt in series history. The Vols won 21 straight over the Commodores from April 1965 to April 1970 and won 12 in a row from May 1961 to March of 1963. So 9-game win streak over the Commodores, your in-state foe. 3rd longest in program history, and we'll see if they can make it 10 straight, of course, with the outcome on Sunday. A lot of people are just trying to say, well, why is it different now? Well, a lot of it is Tony Vitello is making all the difference, but also why is Vanderbilt seemingly kind of down more so than where it's been? It's still not a bad team, still got so much talent, but Luke brought this up. Luke Lipsius, former Tennessee first baseman, on the porch last week. And it's like with name, image, and likeness, man, it's really been the equalizer in baseball for teams in the SEC not named Vanderbilt. Vanderbilt's a private university. Vanderbilt could pay for full scholarships, whereas if you are an SEC team playing baseball, your scholarships are limited. Your scholarships are severely limited, but Vanderbilt's weren't. And that's why Vanderbilt had the advantage for so many different years. And, of course, you had the right guy there in Tim Corbin. You found talent, and you developed talent. You won games, okay? So it's not just the scholarship thing. I mean, there's got to be a lot of factors there. But there's a real equalizer here now because with name, image, and likeness, you can go and you can offer players to come and give them opportunities to earn money, and so you're attracting more talent. We know how NIL works. So it's been fun. I mean, Tennessee, again, has won 9 straight over Vanderbilt at the time of this recording. It's been not something that's happened a whole lot throughout the series history. But nonetheless, Tennessee in game 1, man, 8-4. It was a tightly contested ball game. Christian Moore led off the series with an opposite field home run. That was fun. Tennessee got another run there in the first. Dylan Drawling had an RBI single. Tennessee scored in the 3rd. Vanderbilt scored in the bottom of the 2nd. Vanderbilt scored 3 in the bottom of the 6th and made it a 4-3 ball game. Vanderbilt took the lead there briefly, and then Tennessee plated 5 runs in the top of the 8th inning, highlighted by a pair of 2-run home runs, one from Kavaris Tears and one from pinch hitter Cannon Peebles. And then Dylan Drawling had another RBI single mixed in there as well. So Tennessee held on to win 8-4. A.J. Causey just continues to be brilliant in his role, coming in relief. Chris Stamos, I want to say Tennessee's opener on Friday night, at times he was about as good as he's been. 5 strikeouts, a season high, 2 walks, give up 2 hits, 1 run, 2 innings and 2/3. He was really, really good. And so he collected 8 outs, gave the ball to A.J. Causey, and he went the distance from there. 6 innings and a third of relief, 5 hits, 3 runs, 7 strikeouts, 1 walk. A really tough bottom of the 6th inning where he surrendered 3 runs. But Tony Vitello, Frank Anderson, they kept the faith in him, let him go back out there for the 7th, had a 1-2-3 inning, and then was able to cruise on to the finish line, and Tennessee won 8-4. So the long ball returned. Tennessee had 3 home runs in Friday's game, and Volunteers were able to win 8-4. Saturday's game, boy, it was intense. It was a scoreless game through 2 innings. Tennessee scored a run in the 3rd inning. I believe that was let's see here. Yeah, that was the RBI infield single by Christian Moore. So Tennessee scored a run, should have been more. Tennessee stranded, I want to say, 1 in that inning. Vanderbilt tied it up with an RBI double by R.J. Austin. So it was 0-0, 1-0, and then 1-1. Tennessee scored another run in the 4th inning. Should have been more. It was Cal Stark hitting one to the Bermuda Triangle. Nobody could catch up to it. And Tennessee was able to take the lead, but Tennessee left 2 stranded in that inning. So was good, should have been more. Vanderbilt comes in and scores 2 in the bottom of the 4th inning. It was a home run. It was a 2-run home run from Kazil, their second baseman. So Vanderbilt took a lead there. Tennessee plates 4 in the top of the 6th inning. And it was a Christian Moore 3-run home run on a pitch that was elevated in the zone, a little inside, and 102 miles an hour. I mean, that is difficult to hit, much less hit over the fence. Christian Moore is just an incredible season for Christian Moore. That home run was his 23rd of the season, and now he's 1 home run shy of tying Sonny Cortez, who has the single-season record for Tennessee with 24 home runs. His next home run will tie that, and of course, 2 more home runs. He'll own not only the program record for home runs, by the way, he's 5 ahead of Blake Burke now at 50 career home runs to 45, but he will also own the single-season home run record for Tennessee. So, 3-run home run by Simo in the 6th inning. Tennessee retook the lead. It was Blake Burke that scored on a wild pitch later in that inning. Tennessee held a 3-run lead, and then in the 6th inning, Vanderbilt gets 2 more back in the bottom of the inning. Tennessee adds 1 in the 7th, and Vanderbilt gets the tying run at second base with no outs. And then Nate Snead comes on and collects the final 2 outs of the ball game, picks up the save, and Tennessee's able to win in exciting fashion. Wasn't Drew Beam's best day, of course. Drew Beam, he got the win, but he gave up 5 runs on 6 hits and 5 innings in a third. Kirby Cannell wasn't fantastic. Gave up 2 hits in an inning, just a third of an inning, but Aaron Combs was really good in relief up until the 9th inning, and then Nate Snead bailed him out, picked up his 4th save of the season, and he was fantastic. So Christian Moore was a story from Game 2, though. 5 RBIs. 5 RBI, a 3-run home run, an RBI single, 2 RBI singles. Christian Moore was the story in Game 2, and Tennessee was able to secure the series win over little brother Vanderbilt on a Saturday at Hawkins Field. Again, I apologize. Recording this before Game 3. We'll see if Tennessee can go and finish off the sweep. But, again, at the time of this recording, Tennessee has tied Kentucky atop the SEC leaderboard, and Tennessee owns the tiebreaker over Kentucky. Arkansas is very much in that conversation as well, and it's going to be a fun final week of the regular season. If you want to see all the tiebreaker scenarios, I have those up at volquest.com as we speak. But Tennessee, the number 1 team in the country. Tennessee tied for the number 1 spot in the SEC at the time of this recording, and Tennessee a chance to sweep Vanderbilt at the time of this recording as well. So all good things with Tony Vitello's club, and just continues to show you, like, Tennessee, it truly is an all-everything school. This baseball team is so much fun to watch. I know a lot of you guys are one baseball content, so there you go. All right, that is going to do it here for this edition of Locked On Vols here on a Monday. Again, apologies, on the road, doing the best I can. If you're watching, again, kind of a unique setup here on YouTube, but I'll be back in the home studio tomorrow, getting those questions, those comments, those concerns for the mailbag edition of the show. That is coming up tomorrow. You can watch us, listen to us, subscribe to us, and most importantly, download us wherever you get your podcast. You listen to your podcast, and of course, on Locked On Vols YouTube channel. Can't thank you guys enough. Shout out everydayers. Let's do it again tomorrow. This is Locked On Vols.